Welcome, sports bettors, to BetRepublic.com's quick hitter. We're going to take a look at the big matchup this week between the Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers. And then we'll take a quick stop over at the Atlanta New Orleans games. You know, the schedule makers really blew it on this one. And the NFL is pretty much a perfect organization. They don't make a lot of mistakes from a marketing point of view. But they don't have Minnesota Green Bay as the featured Monday matchup. They use the first meeting between these two teams for a nighttime matchup. But I got to tell you, much more drama in the rematch. They used Brett Favre's first game against his old team. Much more drama, Brett Favre against his old team. First time at Lambeau Field and wearing a purple uniform. I mean, I know they didn't want to use the same teams twice. They should have said the hell with decorum, the hell with what the other teams think. The ratings, the fans, this is the matchup people want to see. Anyway, Favre. For Brett Favre, this game, he wants it almost as much as he wants a Super Bowl. But is he going to get it? And he's not coming in off of his best effort. Last week, we saw Minnesota take their first loss of the season. And the reason why can fall squarely on Brett's shoulders. Yes, just like you can say Brett won the game for him on a last-second touchdown pass, as he's done two other games this year, where he's thrown those late TDs that take him up from behind. And people tend to forget the rest of the play, the other players that got them to that point. You can just as well turn it around and say he's the reason they lost. Critical turnovers, a fumble in the fourth quarter, and then a turnover, interception, tip ball in the fourth. Those two turnovers in the fourth quarter at Pittsburgh cost his team a chance at having a win in that game. And that's the type of effort he has to come into going into this big, big matchup on Sunday. Now, one of the problems in that game was for the first time this year we saw Brett as the playmaker, not the game manager. Most of this year, it's been a case of Brett Favre playing contained, playing within the game plan, keeping his team in position to win. Last week, Favre had season highs for attempts, completions, and yards, and his team lost. And Brett didn't throw a single touchdown pass. He went from game managing to playmaker, didn't work for him. I think he's going to be in that same mode this week. Is Adrian Peterson really healthy? He only had 69 yards last week. We know he's a little banged up going in. He only had 69 yards, but you could say, well, that's against the Steelers defense. Nobody runs over the Steelers defense. But in the first game against the Packers, Peterson, 55 yards on 25 carries. 55 yards, 25 carries, including 12 yards on 11 carries in the second half. Now, the problem for Green Bay has been their offensive line. They lead the league in getting sacked 25 times, not good against a team who leads the league in sacking quarterbacks with 24 in Minnesota. First game, 9 sacks. It's almost too funny to even say it. 9 sacks. Jared Allen had 4.5 himself. But the Green Bay line looks like they're going to get a boost this week. The return of right tackle Mark Tasher, and Chad Clifton might be back. He's been out the last couple of games hurt too. So if that happens, edge Green Bay in one of the areas that cost them a win in that first game on the road in Minnesota. Now, the Green Bay defense has improved also since that game. Yes, they've given up only 3 points in 2 games. Yes, those teams were named Cleveland and Detroit. Toss out Cleveland, they don't score, but Detroit puts points up. Detroit's biggest problem is their defense. There's 3 points in 2 games, no touchdowns in 9 quarters now for this Green Bay defense, going back to the fourth quarter in Minnesota. Pack seems to be getting better each week. They started out of the gate a little bit slow, weren't quite the team that everyone was prepared to put the crown on the head of after that 4-0 preseason that saw both the defense and the offense dominate. Started a little slow, but each week they've showed progress. I don't even think they got outplayed. Technically, yardage-wise, in that first game, Green Bay, 424 yards to Minnesota's 334, almost 100 yards more. So why'd they lose then? Well, they were 0-2 in the red zone on the road with a hostile crowd, whereas the home team, Minnesota, was 3 for 3 in the red zone. This is a drop ball. I think Jennings dropped a ball in the end zone, in the red zone. Stuff like that's going to cost you. But home field's reversed now. I don't think you'll see Minnesota go 3 for 3. And I know you're not going to see Green Bay go 0 for 2 in the red zone. The offense has been clicking each week. Like I said, getting a little bit better. Things are starting to go their way. The other thing is Green Bay We'll have not only Favre coming in for the first time, not only home field advantage, but they'll have fans that are going to either boo or cheer. People say they don't know which one he's going to hear more. But I tell you what, when Favre steps on Lambeau Field wearing purple, those fans are going to boo. The boos will by far drown out the cheers. This is Rodgers' biggest game. This game is a playoff game for Green Bay. This is the cliched must-win spot for them. The Pack's 2 games behind Minnesota for first in the NFC North. And they can't afford to fall to 3 behind them, especially with both tiebreakers going if Minnesota sweeps them 2-0. 2 wild cards up for grabs. At least one, if not both, are going to come from the NFC North, where the Giants, the Phillies, Giants, and the Eagles, World Series on the brain. The Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys play. This is a must-win, cliche must-win, I know, but this is a must-win spot for the Pack. So I think the fans are going to boo Favre. And they're not going to forget that he said he was not going to play for Minnesota unequivocally, and then 3 weeks later signed for them. When he steps on that field, I think you're going to hear way more boos than cheers. And even though he's a veteran, I think it's going to rattle him just a little bit. He's heard boos in other stadiums, but never where he grew up and where he was so beloved. Brett Favre on the road. Green Bay's improved. Less sacks this week. Less turnovers. 2 big turnovers cost him in that first meeting. And better performances in the red zone equal a Green Bay win. Now, let's talk about the Monday night game, because we usually do these quick hitters on a Monday. Let me tell you some scary things about the New Orleans Saints circa 2009. They couldn't score versus the Jets, and the defense stepped up and won it for them. They were down 24-3 with a couple seconds left there at the first half against Miami. They went on and scored 46 points in the game. Drew Brees had 4 interceptions last week, and they still won. Now, Atlanta, last year, New Orleans beat Atlanta in Atlanta by 4, and that was a team that had no defense for New Orleans. New Orleans 6-0 straight up and against the spread this year. They're winning every game in every way you want them to, especially as a bettor who's backing them with your money. And if all that's not enough, they lead the NFL in takeaways with 18. They had 22 takeaways all of last year. We're a game away from the halfway mark, and they're already at 18. Here's some perspective for you. Oakland Raiders offense this year, 5 touchdowns. New Orleans Saints defense this year, 5 touchdowns. My opinion is the number's kind of high, but both Falcon road games against teams with a winning record saw them lose by 16 points each. That was at Dallas and at New England. That line's right now sitting at -10, but I bet you're not going to get a 10 come Monday night. If you like that one, buy it now. Get New Orleans early, because that's going to be 11+ by game time. I don't really have an opinion on it. I'll probably end up betting it, but if I do come up with a solid play, I'll have it for you here at betrepublic.com at the website, or back here on BRTV. That's our quick hit. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you over at betrepublic.com.